English guest. The side where you're sitting.
I know, yeah.
All arranged.
I'll sit here. How about that?
I don't want to sit right in the middle. Oh, I am.
You get to sit in the middle.
Oh dear.
How long
Would you like to sit here, or would you like to sit?
Oh, I don't care.
So this is. Hi. It's so nice to see you.
Thank you.
So I am almost at year 2 exactly in this fall, year 3 in total. I was an assistant coach, and then my predecessor retired, so then I became a head coach. Before this, I was at MIT, and then I was getting my master's at Harvard down the road. So
Oh my God.
Two different worlds. Very funny.
Are we?
I'm like,
Good morning, everyone. If you could find your seats, we're going to get started. So welcome. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this morning. My name is Rayanne Buskey. I am the director of the McAndrews Fund here at Dickinson College, and I am so honored that you all are joining us this morning. So today, we are here to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the passing of Title IX. 50 years ago, 37 words changed a lot of lives for a lot of women. And I'm so glad that you can all be a part of our celebration this morning. So what we're going to do today is you're going to stop hearing from me at some point, and you're going to hear from our wonderful panelists this morning. I'll let them introduce themselves in a little bit, but they need no introduction. So we'll hear from our panelists. We'll take some questions. They'll go through some questions and some discussion topics we wanted to talk about this morning, and then we'll take some questions from the audience. Does that sound good? Okay, perfect. So panelists, if you would like to introduce yourselves.
I'm Jessica Kiefer. I just graduated a few weeks ago in May. I was on the women's soccer team, and I was also a member of the 6th class of the Harris Society, which we were able to become an official hatted society this year on campus. It's made up of 8 senior female athletes, so that was definitely a really great experience to be a part of. And I'll actually be back in the fall to attend the graduate program that they have here now at Dickinson and play one more season of soccer.
I'm Aby Diop. I'm the head women's basketball coach. Just finished my first season here. It was a great year. Really happy to be here.
hi, I'm Katie Winger at McArdle. I am proud to be the head men's and women's swim coach here at Dickinson, as well as the aquatics director. I'm also the proud daughter of an alum, Dave Winger at 85. I am in my 3rd year here, just wrapping up. So year 1, I was an assistant coach on staff with the swim program. This is my 2nd year as head coach of the program.
I'm Kirsten Sabia, class of 92, and I'm really tired. I played soccer here at Dickinson for 3 seasons, and in my junior year abroad, I played soccer in Bologna on a professional women's team. So that's my claim to fame when somebody asks you, tell me things that you would never expect. And I think they went from youngest to oldest here, so you're next, Karen.
We did. I'm Karen Pflug-Felder, and I graduated in 1971. I'm obviously pre-Title IX. When I was here, I played field hockey, basketball, and we started a club lacrosse team, which sort of fizzled out, but then came back, and now there's a real lacrosse team, which is very cool. And while I was here, I was also a blue hat, so I'm a hatted society person, too.
So before we get into some panel questions, I switched mics because I couldn't keep leaning into this thing. So we wanted to talk about and lay a foundation of what Title IX is and what kind of impact it makes on our students here at Dickinson. So forgive me for the legal jargon, but I pulled this from the NCAA. So Title IX of the Education Amendments Act of 1972 is a federal law that states, no person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any education program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. So Title IX applies to all educational institutions, both public and private, that receive federal funds. Almost all private colleges and universities must abide by Title IX because they receive federal funding through federal financial aid programs used by their students. Athletic programs are considered educational programs and activities, and there are three basic parts of Title IX as it applies to athletics. So participation, scholarships, and other benefits. Title IX requires that women and men be provided equitable opportunities to participate in sports. Title IX does not require institutions to offer identical sports, but an equal opportunity to play. Title IX requires that female and male student athletes receive athletic scholarship dollars proportional to their participation. And Title IX requires the equal treatment of female and male student athletes in the provisions of equipment and supplies, scheduling of game and practice times, travel and daily allowance, access to tutoring, coaching, locker rooms, medical and training facilities, housing and dining facilities, publicity and promotions, I'm almost done, I swear, support services, and recruitment of student athletes. So Kirsten actually brought this to our attention. So ESPN is doing their 50-50 initiative, and this is a monumental initiative highlighting the civil rights journey of women across the sports and cultural landscape. The initiative commemorates the 50th anniversary of the passing of Title IX, and I have a short video clip that we'd like to share with you all this morning. This one.
No person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any education program or activity receiving federal financial assistance.
Molly Dean, was that you swimming in the black and white? Yeah, I thought so. It looked like you.
So I don't know if any of you are softball fans, but I played softball. And so during the Women's College World Series, I saw promotions of this initiative the whole time. Every commercial break had something to do with this initiative. And I'm just very excited to see it come to fruition and move forward. So the central piece of this initiative with ESPN revolves around a documentary, 37 Words, which is a 4-part series exploring the equal rights journey for women in education and athletics, directed by Dawn Porter and Nicole Newnham. Its themes carries across all sports and women's athletics. So we have another short video to share with you all.
Do you think people know what Title IX is? We want to make sure that any girl born in this world would have a place to compete. It just became completely unacceptable.
Hopefully we played a small part in ensuring that for many decades girls would continue to play.
I'm standing on your shoulders.
Laws change because people's voices are heard.
How many days and counting till June 21st? 10. So 10 days and counting. Come on. There we go. Okay. So here at Dickinson, one of the things that's taking place is called a gender equity review. So Dickinson College Athletics will hold a gender equity review that will take place this year as a promise to ensure Dickinson College is supporting underrepresented student athletes and providing them with equitable opportunities. So an outside consultant is going to oversee that gender equity review, and it should be completed sometime around August. So Dickinson College is also currently drafting a trans and non-binary inclusion policy that will mirror the Centennial Conference, their policy that was rolled out earlier in 2022. We also have Kat Maddock here, who is Dickinson College Title IX coordinator, who gave me some information prior to today to talk about the sexual assault as it applies to Title IX on campus. So on February 6, 2020, the college reached an agreement regarding actions to be taken reviewing the Title IX policy. This agreement is available on the Dickinson website if you'd like to explore it further. There are also monthly updates relating to the work being done resulting from this agreement that are also available online. The Title IX office is currently working on the Title IX policy based on federal regulations and embedding restorative justice and mediation to empower survivors to reach the resolution that they want. Kat, did you want to add anything to that? Okay, perfect. So now we're going to get into some questions from our panelists. This is the part where you stop hearing from me and you start hearing from them. So my first question for you all is, tell me about some of your favorite memories from being here at Dickinson. Don't all jump at once.
Okay, I'll start. Because if I don't do it now, maybe my memories will go. Well, to begin with, when I came to Dickinson, you could play several sports here as a woman. Field hockey was one. Basketball was not. There was something called aquacade that you did, like, you looked like dancing underwater, I guess. And then tennis, and that was it. I have to say that there were a number of us that really wanted to play basketball, and we talked to Dave Evanson, who was the athletic director. And by my sophomore year, we were playing basketball. We actually had a team. We played Penn State. We also played them in field hockey, and we did beat them in field hockey. In basketball, they were too tall, what can you say? So I think probably some of my favorite memories are seeing the athletic program advance, I guess. The other favorite memory is, some of you would remember, six-person basketball. We started playing six-person basketball where there was a roving guard and a roving forward, and everybody else had to sort of stand still. And you get 3 dribbles to do whatever you want with them. That was pretty exciting. But by the time I graduated, we were playing the 5-person game, the real basketball, which was good. So there you go.
I mean, it's too many memories and not enough time, obviously. We need others to speak. But I think for me, you know, that opportunity to show up early to campus as a freshman and have that week before everyone else came, like, allowed to have a comfort level. So playing soccer, you know, gave me that. I think from the perspective, too, of the boys' team and the girls' team, like, we were the same. I don't even think I knew what Title IX was when I was 17 years old, to be honest. But I think it was the camaraderie of the van rides that was always the best part. And the fact that the college entrusted, like, the students to drive is somewhat crazy and probably has been litigious over the years. But my favorite memory, though, was we were going to play Catholic University in DC, and we're driving down 495, and I don't know, like, I hadn't been able to put my clothes in the dryer in time, so I'm like holding a sports bra outside the window of the van and hoping that it'll dry. And one of my classmates, Roseanne Bassler, who's a judge now, which is incredible, she hit me and it dropped. So needless to say, I was not a runner because I was a goalie on the soccer team. So it didn't hurt me in the end.
But I bet somebody found that and said, who would lose their sports bra on the side of the road?
Hopefully they were able to put it to good use.
Have to tell you, I'm not going to beat that one. But I would say, as I think about this and think about why we're here, this fall I was at a swim meet. So it was a quad swim meet, which doesn't often happen. It was our first swim meet of the year after a long hiatus thanks to COVID. And our men's team and women's team are both there, and swimming's such a unique sport. They compete for maybe 2 minutes total out of a 4.5-hour swim meet, so they have a lot of time to stand and watch and cheer. Our men's team meet, not going great. Women's team meet is going amazingly. Our first years are doing really well, and Gettysburg happens to be there, okay? So they start chanting after certain events when people win. He's a freshman, she's a freshman. And last event of the meet, we knew we had a tight race to win, and our men's team lined up along the side of the pool deck, and our women's team relay lined up for our 400 relay. And these 4 women, all first years, just annihilated the field and won. And it was really exciting. And the best part was that our men's team lined up and yelled back at Gettysburg College, "They're all freshmen." And I thought that's why we do what we do. That's why it's important to have men and women competing side by side. So that's what I'll share.
I think for me, this being my first season, the relationships and people that I've met through this first year have been great. And it takes me to our alumni game, actually. We had a really, really good turnout. It was really fun to see, our alum compete and how competitive that they still are. And them just all back together. Obviously with COVID, the alumni game the previous year wasn't able to happen. So to see that many alum come back, and I think it ties into Day of Giving and just how much they're invested in seeing our current athletes do well, was a really good memory. And we competed against Johns Hopkins that day and we won, and that just made it all better.
Yeah, I would say kind of similar to everyone. I've had a lot of really good memories and experiences. Obviously, I'm coming back willingly for an extra year, so I could say I've had a good experience. But I would just say the camaraderie that I've been able to experience between not just the women's sports, but all of the sports, and seeing everyone show up to the games, not just because it's, men's lacrosse or men's basketball, but just going because they want to support athletics, whether it's men's or women's. One specifically that I remember is my sophomore year, we were able to host the Centennial playoffs here at Dickinson. So that's something that the women's soccer team hadn't been able to experience in a while, not only making the playoffs, but getting to be the #1 seed in hosting. And I think that semifinal and championship game, just seeing how many people came out to D Park, and obviously D Park's a bit of a walk, so sometimes you don't always get the same turnout as some of the sports that are at the Durden Athletic Facility, but the school support also, they set up vans and rides to get people there, so just seeing all the support that we had. And then that same year, we made it to the Sweet 16 of the NCAA tournament. And I think professors and the schools set up viewings, we were getting videos of people in rooms as big as this, packing it in, watching our games. So just that support that I've been able to experience throughout my time has been something really special.
Thank you all for teaching me that I should have gone to Dickinson and not where I went to school. So, Karen, you touched on this earlier as someone who came through Dickinson pre-Title IX. So can you share a little bit about what your experience was like? And now you've served on alumni council. You've served in a lot of roles at the college since then. How you've seen it transform from your days?
There we go. Sure. It's funny. I look back on my experience at Dickinson, and I did not feel that the women athletes were lesser, I guess, than the men. Certainly there were more men's sports, but Dickinson always was very good about providing the training room for us. We did have training meals before we went away or when we came back. Dave Evanson, the athletic director, was very good about getting the basketball started and also about allowing us to have a club lacrosse team and even arranged play days and that sort of thing with other colleges. So I don't feel that we were put down at all, perhaps a little neglected, but I think everybody else was too. I think Dickinson was sort of ahead of its time in treating its female athletes well. And I guess that's about it. I've seen, after I graduated from here, I taught in high school and coached girls lacrosse. And obviously through that period of time, I've seen a whole lot of change. I mean, just the fact that women are offered scholarships, that women were not offered scholarships anywhere when I was playing, obviously because we played Penn State, you know. But there has been a whole lot of change since I played, and a lot of very good change, and some change that is maybe not so good, I don't know, so.
Yeah, so a lot of change in opportunity and accessibility for athletics for young women to be an opportunity to earn an education. So, Kirsten, you talked about earlier and in your current role at the PGA, how do you see the impact of Title IX in the corporate world? Because now student athletes are graduating, like me and Jessica, where all we've known is Title IX, and all we've known is an era where this exists. So how do you see the impact of that in the corporate world, and how do you think Title IX plays a role in women moving into career fields that were once previously and might still be male-dominated spaces?
Yeah, it's interesting when I think about being an athlete. Even prior to Dickinson, my sport was baseball. So I played on the boys' baseball team. I was the only girl. And just the fact that they allowed that, number one. I had to switch, though, to softball. They would not let me play on the men's team in high school. So I don't know what that meant or why they wouldn't allow it. I think it was like they were afraid I was going to get hurt or something like that. But now you see, girls playing on football teams, so that's kind of amazing. But as I talk to my colleagues who are younger than me, I think it's interesting for them to understand like kind of what in the business world and also working in golf, like the competitive business world. My peers they all grew up in Title IX. I mean, I'm 51. They're leading, the boss's boss, basically, the head of the PGA Tour, Jay Monahan. He grew up in Massachusetts. He went to Trinity College. We're peers. There's no difference between us. Whereas his predecessor, was 20 years older, and he grew up in a time where women were not kind of equals in that setting. So I think it's interesting that we are seen no differently just because of our gender. And frankly, like it also, I think, allows for women to have that. Title IX is like an example of how women can have more of a voice in the workplace because we had equal opportunities when we were, at least I did, when we were younger.
Thank you. I think, even getting into starting out my career, I think that I was seen as no different than men in the room, and I think I have everybody that came before me to thank for that.
Actually, you are more different because women get more shit done.
Amen. Amen. So, Katie.
Sorry, President Jones.
Katie, so in your role, you coach both the men's and the women's team. So can you talk a little bit about that and how your experience is different than men's teams who might have only male coaches?
Yeah, it's a really special privilege. So I have the privilege of being the first female identifying head swim coach here, and I don't take that for granted. That's due to good work of women before me who I get to stand on their shoulders, just like was stated in that video. It's an incredible opportunity. The job of a coach is always to meet the needs of student athletes and figure out exactly who they are, what makes them tick, and what they need from me as coach to get to that next level. And I think having that opportunity to coach both male identifying and female identifying athletes is just another layer that I get to unpack. But it's a lot of fun. It's really neat for me to see how, in some ways, I typically connect connect with male identifying athletes in different ways than I do with some female identifying athletes, and just understand that that's part of who they are and part of my job to figure out what they need. But I think it's a special privilege, and I think it, to me, is really indicative of how much the tide has changed, hopefully, for women in sport. And I'm fortunate because I had 2 female head coaches throughout my college career, and I know that their modeling of that for me made me realize that it was possible. So it's truly about who's done good work along the way in this process, and it's not just about, legalese that lays somewhere statically. It's about people responding to true change and acting upon it.
Thank you. So I'll come back to Aby and Katie, both in your roles as coaches. Aby, we'll start with you. So how does Title IX and its implications help you create opportunities and meaningful opportunities for your student athletes, and kind of how did Title IX kind of create a path for you as a coach to kind of explore that as a career?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be in this position if it wasn't for Title IX, and that starts from being a student athlete. I was fortunate, to have a great athletic experience. And after that, I knew I wanted to kind of give back in the same ways that I was given and the opportunities I was given as an athlete. I had a great coach in college that served as a mentor for me, and I think just thinking about being that for a student athlete or the athletes that I come across during this process is something that I don't take for granted and want to continue to do. I think that's, from thinking about my staff and the women that we have on staff as assistants and kind of building it from there, and hopefully throughout the process getting players that are interested in getting into coaching or just anything in this role to continue that. And I think that starts right when they get on campus and even before then, and just kind of really instilling what it all means. And again, I wouldn't be in this role if it wasn't for Title IX.
I think for me, it's just something that I wish I could say I think about it every day, but more so it's a privilege, it's a comfort that I know beyond a shadow of a doubt my men's team and my women's team are getting both what they need equally, and that I am empowered to support all of them. And that's not always how it's been. And so I think we're fortunate here at Dickinson. My sense is that in many ways we were pioneers in this area. But I found an article in my office drawer. My predecessor kept a lot of files, and I was going through them one day, and I found this article from the Dickinsonian, and it was about the Little 3 swim meets. So I'm sure you all are familiar with the other 2 schools. I don't need to mention them by name. And one of those 3 schools, we were supposed to have a swim meet with both the men's team and the women's team. And I think this was after Title IX, to be honest. And one of those teams refused to show up and compete because the men's team didn't want to compete at a meet where the women's team was. And to me, that was so devastating to read, and to say that that was, 45 years ago, somewhere in that range. That's not that long ago, and yet also here we are. And that's not something ever on the table for my athletes. It's not, some team's staging a protest because they don't want to compete with everybody that's here. We just go get on the bus all together as a team, and we go show up and race. And the men support the women and vice versa. So I think some of it is just knowing that our student athletes have the assurance that things are equitable for them, and that they don't have to worry about that. That instead of worrying about fighting for opportunity, they can just go race and be awesome and be proud of who they are.
Yeah, I think the implications of Title IX have opened a lot of doors in terms of participation, but I think kind of the implication that's further down the line is now women have opportunities to make careers out of coaching the sports that they were able to participate in. And I think that's a wonderful change, and just kind of the domino effect of what happens when we create social change. So Jessica, your turn. So as a recent alum who's coming back for her grad certificate in the fall, you have known nothing else but Title IX. So what kind of what did you understand about it before, and what does that experience mean to you, and how has your student athlete experience shaped you into the person you are today?
Yeah, definitely. I would say, kind of like it's been said before, I've been really lucky to have the privilege that I knew what Title IX was, but I was already being able to reap the benefits of it. It was never something that I had to question, not just in my college experience, but growing up since I was a kid, since I was little, I was always taught and told that I could do whatever I wanted to do. Anything I put my mind to, I could find success in. And so I think that's definitely attributed to the women that came before me, and not just in my college experience, but years before me, and the work that's been done in the world and at Dickinson, and that it's always evolving. You know, it's never stagnant. They're always looking to improve and change, and that's something that I've been really lucky to experience in my time here. And it really has shaped my experience, being able to, kind of like what Katie was saying, you know, I'm able to just show up and play and do my job. I don't have to think twice about anything else. And so being able to come to a school like that, where I'm able to play my sport and do my academics, be involved in so many other things, and I don't even have to question or worry about anything, that's something that I have the privilege of having, and I've been very grateful for that, and it really has shaped my experience here.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I think one of the phrases that I've heard a lot since we started this panel is, I was fortunate too. And I think the second generation that come, they got to have that opportunity to be fortunate too, because the generation before fought for us too. And so I think that language shift in that terminology and that phrase that we use to describe our opportunities is also evolving. Like, we get to be fortunate because the generation before us got to fight. So along that line, how, and this is for all of you, so whoever wants to take this question, feel free, how have you seen attitudes change from the top down? I mean, I know that we're in it, we're in the mud, we're playing sports, we're doing the thing, but how have you seen attitudes change from the top down, not just in women exploring athletic opportunities, but now parents have the opportunities they have multitude of opportunities to invest in their daughters' athletic careers?
I'd like to sort of address that from two perspectives. Obviously, I coached, and the beginning of my coaching was the beginning of Title IX, basically. And mothers began to realize that their children could get scholarships. And that was a good thing and a bad thing. I mean, a lot of times the mothers thought, of course it's their children, thought that their child was like the best thing ever. And when you looked at, I coached girls lacrosse. To begin with, there weren't that many scholarships because at that point there wasn't that many teams. So that was a bit of a fight to begin with, because mothers thought, of course, well, my child is now eligible for a scholarship. Doesn't matter if she's not really that good, but you know. But that has sort of evened out, and that is a really good thing. The other thing that I see that is even better, I think, is the coaching opportunities for women. In the beginning, when I was coaching lacrosse, there were, of course, lacrosse was a men's sport, very popular. There were men coaches that I coached against. And, you know, I thought, well, you know, the men's game is a little bit different. It used to be a lot different. Now it's not so different. But now I'm seeing the reverse. There are women's line coaches in professional football. There are women's strength trainers, strength training coaches, and they're getting the same respect as a man would get. And that, I think, is a really neat result of this. So.
Yeah, another opportunity example of that would be in golf, female rules officials who are in essence referees, and to see that and kind of breaking the barrier as far as that's concerned. I think from my perspective on your question is a little different because it's more thinking from the fan and their point of view. And you look at certain sports, and I think certain sports really excel because the women's part of the game is actually more interesting in certain instances than the men's. If you think about, I think, the quintessential Title IX example, the 1999 World Cup for women's soccer, and just that and what they have done in those, 23 odd years since in getting equity from a pay perspective. Tennis is another great example in professional tennis. The fans want to watch the women almost sometimes more than they want to watch the men, and so they are equitably paid. But in other sports, you still have that inequality. And I think people are like, see it as a men and a women perspective. I don't see that as why women golfers make less or why women basketball players make less. In the end, it all comes down to the sponsors. And I think sometimes, they want the impressions in some of those sports. They're not going to get the same impressions they would get from a men's perspective. And that's why there is that, inequality. It's not because they're lesser at what they do. It just kind of comes in that instance down to dollars and cents. And does that make it right? No, but I also don't think it should take anything away from those professional athletes.
So you mentioned sponsorship dollars. So this is not one of the questions I sent you in advance, so sorry for that. But so with the passing of name, image, and likeness, how do you think that has the opportunity to balance the scales in terms of equality? Because I know that there are women athletes who are killing it using name, image, and likeness more so than their male counterparts. So how do you think that has implications to kind of more equitably balance the scales? Because when it comes down to dollars and cents, that might skew towards the women.
I'm happy to speak to this as somebody who doesn't work in the industry, and yeah, I'm not profiting right now from name, image, and likeness, sadly. I feel like from my perspective, and this is just off the cuff, but businesses have to change their perspective, and how we consume as consumers has to change for that to positively impact women to the degree that it's going to balance the scales. And I'm not sure how much we can control that other than going out into spheres of influence and saying, hey, why are you liking that picture of a male identifying athlete doing that and not a female identifying athlete doing the same exact thing? And I think we just have to change it, and that's on educators and people further down the pipeline. But we all have to examine how we consume and why we consume in order to make that impact, in my personal opinion.
So we can jump back to the previous question that I just wanted to throw that out there. Talking about the attitude changing from the top down, about how now, because women now have an opportunity, how have you seen that change from the top down?
I'll go back to a little bit of what I was saying earlier. In fact, I had an interesting conversation as I was walking in here. It's hard. I mean, I think every business is different. But I do personally think in the business world that women work harder and smarter than men. And I think it's because we've had to fight to do that. And is it getting more equitable? Yes. And you see that in industries where you have women CEOs. But I still think, and especially in the sports world, that they're in a male professional sports world, that we work harder and smarter, but I don't know, it's hard to say why. I don't understand why, and I don't know if it comes to ego, if it comes to just the way people were raised, but I don't think we're there yet. But I think we are so much farther ahead than we were when some of the folks here in the room were, in their 20s and going into the professional world. The things that we used to have to to endure as women, those things would never be acceptable in today's day and age. And I think you could say that Title IX was a part of that, and like changing the way, the culture of business, and helped that. And I also think that women over the years, because of being, student athletes, we had the opportunity to fight for other women and help them grow. And in my, as I was growing, there wasn't really a whole lot of role models for me, but I think that in the tail end of my career, like that's our responsibility, is to help the women grow. And it doesn't matter if you're dribbling the basketball or, if you are, speaking in front of a group of 100 people. That is something that I think, if you think about my days at Dickinson, I said it yesterday, like when you're allowed to be yourself, that gives you that comfort level to, if it has to fight for yourself, it has to fight for others, instead of having to put up a facade. And I think going to a liberal arts college, is just reinforce that more than if there was, going to a big school.
Yeah, so you talked about,
Can I add something to that?
Of course.
I think women working harder and smarter have helped the men to grow as well. And I think particularly the women of Title IX have helped the men grow through Title IX. And we are becoming more equitable because the men are, by and large, following the women's example to some extent. So.
Yeah, so you touched on culture shift, and I think one of the ways that we talk a lot about inclusivity, so that culture shift of inclusivity for everyone. So how do you all think Dickinson has become a more inclusive place since the passage of Title IX? Don't all jump at once.
I never thought it was exclusive. I never thought that ever. And maybe that's because we had this heritage as an older institution, one that was co-ed for many, many years, more so than other colleges and universities. But I don't feel like ever once in Carlisle did I ever feel I was lesser because I was a woman. In fact, I think we were greater.
I agree there. Dickinson, I never felt excluded, and it's pre-Title IX. Yes, there were differences, but I really thought that at least the athletic department tried to do, if we had asked for something like basketball or lacrosse, they tried to help us that way. So I think Dickinson was way more advanced than a lot of other places in that respect.
You can thank people like you, Karen, for that, and starting the sports that you did here. I personally would, Les Pullman was, amazing. I think his first year was my first year, and I know he retired recently, but I mean, he loved the girls' sports. And maybe even more than the boys, the men's. But he was so supportive of us and our coaches. Al Maslin, who is, an alum as well, he was wonderful. He was kind of like our dad. And frankly, he probably wasn't even that much older than us at the time, but he seemed so much older. And so, again, the comfort level of what you can get here at Dickinson, it was just another extension of your family.
I would maybe just add that from my perspective as somebody who's newer to this community in my role, I think Dickinson recognizes that there's a difference between equality and equity, and I think that makes all the difference for our female athletes. So the fact that we're making sure we're intentional, we're doing this gender equity review, that we have a Harris Society, right? That it's not just about we have an equal number of sports and we're resourcing equally. We're saying, what can we do to continue to change the tide? Because we do need more female conference commissioners. We do need more female athletic directors in order to continue the work that's been done. And we still have a ways to go. But I think the college has done a really good job from my vantage point of recognizing that, again, we need to continue resourcing, and sometimes that looks a little bit different in some ways than what we do for our male athletes.
And I think all of the things that you said in terms of Dickinson always being an inclusive place, I think is one of the reasons that we are here in celebration of 50 years of Title IX. And so if after today's session, we will be sending out an email to all of you, both with a recording of this session and with some additional resources for Title IX, so that you can be more informed if you would like. So in the spirit of celebration, we have a very exciting announcement. So since the passage of Title IX, women's athletic programs have experienced tremendous growth and support, but as we heard today, there is still more work to be done. And Dickinson recognizes the importance of women's athletics, as you've heard today, and the vital role they play in creating opportunities for young women to learn, grow, and achieve greatness. And thanks to the generosity of two Dickinson families, Robin Rains and Jane Dietz, parents of class of 2024, and Julie, class of 96, and Kevin McAllister, class of 98. The Women's Athletics Endowment Fund has been established so that women's sports will continue to thrive at Dickinson and receive the permanent funding that is essential to their success. We are so very excited about the launch of this fund, and it will support things like state-of-the-art facilities and training resources, our ability to retain and attract top coaches, vital sports medicine equipment for rehab and injury prevention, and international trips that provide unique and impactful team training and bonding experiences. So I will open this question to all of you. How important is permanent funding to women's athletics, and how, and Katie and Abby, how will this impact future generations of Dickinsonians?
I mean, it's permanent, and it's something that we can, we're talking to our incoming players, and the fact that this is something that will be here for the years to come is amazing. And again, our student athletes, which this is all about, reap the benefits of that firsthand. So no matter what it's for, like you mentioned, international trips or facilities or being able to, have a full-time assistant coach, whatever the case is, again, the student athletes reap the benefits of that. Our women student athletes do, and that's the biggest part of it. So I'm definitely really excited, and I'm excited to talk about it more with our student athletes, our incoming, our recruits, and I think it's definitely something different from other Division III programs, and yeah, just really excited about it.
Yeah, I see it being hugely impactful in our recruitment and our retention and just the overall culture of this place. And it's something that's distinctive to Dickinson. This is not something that exists in a lot of other places. And so it's really special, and it continues the tradition that hopefully Dickinson has always had a heart for inclusion and has tried to take steps and take actions toward that. I think it's just so unique to be able to say that we have permanent funding for women's athletics when there's a very long history of there being permanent funding for men's sports. This is a hugely monumentous thing. So thanks to all that have supported, and really excited for the future.
I would say, too, from my perspective, being here for 4 years but still being a current athlete, something my team always talks about is, wanting the future players that we may not play with to have the same experiences that we had. And so with this fund being started, that's something that I'm really looking forward to, because in my time here, I was lucky enough, my team did an international trip my freshman year. We were able to go to Costa Rica. We were able to go to the NCAA tournament, and it was never a question of buses or hotel rooms, travel, things like that. So being able to not only have those experiences, but getting to see the girls that come after me get to have those similar experiences, if not better, that's something that really excites me about this endowment being started.
So with that, at this time, we'd like to take any questions from our audience members, if you have any that were raised from any part of today's discussion. Does anybody have any questions? Yes.
I'm not the expert. I would say Kim Mace-Moore, who's not here, is the best point of contact to discuss all of this, our senior woman administrator. But I would say, from what I understand, the way that we comply with Title IX is through resourcing of our student athletes. So it's equity through those resources, not just in terms of numbers of participation. And my understanding is that through staffing and additional kind of funding allocation, whether that's through budgeting itself or through use of donations in strategic ways to support women's sports, that's how that balance is achieved. But I do know from what I'm hearing, the college is always ensuring that we are doing that to the best degree possible, that we're not just complying, but we're going above and beyond, which is, I think, to some degree, why we're choosing to do this gender equity review, to make sure we're doing it with excellence.
I think also, too, being able to attend a school like Dickinson, I think playing a Division III sport at a liberal arts college is probably a little different than some bigger D1 schools where football is I can't even imagine being on a women's soccer team at Alabama when you have the Alabama football team. So I think that's something that I've always been very grateful for, and something that really drove me here to Dickinson is that liberal arts, not just education, but experience in general. And yes, I'm on the women's soccer team, which isn't as big or maybe as popular as the football team here, but I've never felt that I was any lesser than the football team in terms of even just attendance, resources. The resources that my team has, and I know other women's sports have, is equal to what the men's football team has, even if, maybe they get more people at their games, it's still very equal. So I think that kind of attests to the liberal arts and Division III experience that is definitely very different than, a Division II or Division I school.
Any other questions from our audience? Yes.
To that point, you don't even have to play the sport to work in sports. You can be a lawyer, like Carol was, and work for a professional sports organization. You can be an accountant and do the same thing. So you might not be able to have the body to keep playing sports as you get older, but you can stay in sport.
The body gets old.
Do we have any other questions? Yes.
Yeah, definitely. I was just going to say that's the experience that I've had anytime that we've had to leave class early or miss a class. We were never, looked down upon or punished. It was always like, oh, good luck. Like, can't wait to hear about it. One of my accounting professor my sophomore year came to, we had an away game at Messiah, and she came to the game, and I had no idea. I checked my phone after, and I had an email from her saying like how great we played and stuff like that. And then especially with, we had to miss more class, I would say my sophomore year with the NCAAs, gone more weekends, and sometimes we were leaving on Fridays 3 weeks in a row, so I was missing the same classes. But every time those professors were so supportive, and one of my professors during class was like having like our game up on the board during class, and instead of class, like they were watching the games and supporting us. So yeah, I mean, the professors and the school in general is just so supportive. Obviously of women athletes, but just athletes in general. And like you said, being able to come to a school where I don't have to pick and choose or worry about splitting my time, I'm able to, our coaches are super understanding of our academics and making sure we're doing well and focused on that the same way our professors are with our sports. So having that balance has been something that I'm really grateful for. And speaking to some of my friends that go to other schools and play sports at all the different divisions, they don't have that same experience that I've gotten here at Dickinson.
Any other audience questions? Panelists, any parting words for the good of the order?
Thank you to those who came this morning and made us feel welcome, and thank you to Dickinson for everything. It's really heartening to listen to these coaches who could probably be my child, and to see how smart and passionate that you are. Like, the student athletes here are very lucky to have both of you. And then for you to have the opportunity for your 5th year, and you're so well-spoken, and just another example of how bright Dickinson makes us, and in the future connects us.
Well, oh yes. Well, I hope you all leave this morning's session feeling inspired. I don't play sports anymore, but if this was a pregame locker room talk, I feel like I'm ready to go conquer the world at this point. Once again, our panelists will be up here for a few more minutes if you have any questions or things you'd like to ask them on an individual basis. Again, I really thank you all for coming out and joining us this morning. Once again, with the launch of the Women's Athletics Endowment, we're really trying to build a permanent, lasting legacy for female student athletes here at Dickinson. So I hope you'll join us and become a part of that. If you do have any other questions, feel free to flag one of the staff members down that are here today. And again, thank you all for joining us this morning.